Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. President Joe Biden says the drawdown of the U.S. troops from Afghanistan is on track but will not be done in next few days. He was speaking to reporters at the White House after the U.S. and NATO forces left Afghanistan's key Bagram air base. He said Afghans bear the responsibility to secure their country. Earlier, the Taliban said they welcome and support the exit of all U.S. and NATO troops from the air base. Indian troops have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Pulwama district. The youths were targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Rajpura area of the district. The occupying forces have killed over 380 Kashmiris since the revocation of the occupied valley's status in August 2019. China has urged the Western countries to refrain from interfering in the internal affairs of other countries and focus on their own problems. At a press briefing, a foreign ministry spokesman said the international community will continue to oppose these moves. Wang Wenbin added that the West's attempts to contain China under the pretext of human rights are doomed to fail. Pakistan has received 2.5 million doses of Moderna COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United States under the COVAX facility. The country has reported 24 deaths and more than 1,200 infections in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, India's death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 400,000 after the country logged 853 daily deaths. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.9 million lives and infected more than 182 million people so far. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. President Joe Biden says the drawdown of the U.S. troops from Afghanistan is on track but will not be done in next few days. He was speaking to reporters at the White House after the U.S. and NATO forces left Afghanistan's key Bagram air base. Earlier, the Taliban said they welcome and support the exit of all U.S. and NATO troops from the air base. More in this report.
Violence in Afghanistan has significantly risen as the Taliban continue to seize districts amid the withdrawal of foreign forces. As the U.S. handed over key Bagram air base to Afghan authorities, the Taliban said they welcome and support the pullout. The group said a complete withdrawal will pave the way for Afghans to decide their future. While Russia has warned NATO against redeployment of the alliance's military infrastructure in Central Asia. It also warned that ISIS is quickly gaining territory in Afghanistan, whereas Turkey said it's engaged in talks with the U.S. and other countries regarding the security of Kabul airport once the withdrawal is completed.
Indian troops have martyred 4 civilians in the Pulwama district of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youths were targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Rajpura area. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Foreign Office has condemned the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiri youths. It said forced disappearances and incarcerations by the Indian Army have become a norm in occupied Kashmir. It also urged the global community to hold India accountable for its crimes against humanity. Pakistan has dismissed allegations by India's foreign ministry regarding a drone being spotted over Indian High Commission in Islamabad. The statement comes after India claimed that a drone was sighted over the premises of the Indian High Commission on June 26. The Foreign Office termed the allegation as patently false, saying no proof has been provided to substantiate the claim. It added Pakistan rejects such diversionary Indian tactics and will continue to stand by the people of occupied Kashmir. Earlier, Pakistan also rejected the Indian allegations about its role in an alleged drone attack in the occupied valley. The United Nations General Assembly has recognized Islamophobia as an emerging terror threat. The Foreign Office said Pakistan, in collaboration with other OIC countries, spearheaded the initiative. Adopting the revised global counter-terrorism strategy, the UNGA called for taking measures to address new threats on the basis of xenophobia, racism and Islamophobia. It also called on the UN Secretary General to report on the threat posed by such Islamophobic terrorist groups. Pakistan's Foreign Office has hailed the landmark development. It said the new strategy reaffirmed commitment to resolve prolonged conflicts in order to address the root causes of international terrorism. China has warned Western countries against interference in its internal affairs. At a press briefing, a foreign ministry spokesman said attempts to contain China under the pretext of human rights are doomed to fail. Wang Wenbin said Western states need to respect basic norms of international relations. This comes after Belarus made a joint statement on behalf of 65 countries at the 47th session of the UN Human Rights Council. The statement has stressed that Hong Kong and Xinjiang are China's internal matter. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged Myanmar's military to release Aung San Suu Kyi and President Win Myint. His spokesperson, Eddie Kaneko, made the statement a day after thousands of other detainees were freed. Kaneko expressed the UN's deep concern over the continued violence and arbitrary arrests by the security forces. Earlier, the ruling military said they released detainees held on incitement charges for taking part in protests. According to an activist group, the military has killed at least 885 people and detained over 6,400 people since the coup. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the fragile ceasefire with Hamas for the third time. The Israel Defense Forces allege that the attack was in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave.
In a tweet, the Israeli military claimed it struck a weapon manufacturing site belonging to Hamas. The resistance movement has not commented on the incident so far. Meanwhile, Hamas has denounced recent remarks by German President Walter Steinmeier. Steinmeier told Israeli media that ICC has no jurisdiction to investigate Israeli war crimes in Palestinian territories. A Hamas spokesperson said the comments show Berlin's bias towards Israel's aggressive policies. In another development, Israeli soldiers injured 61 Palestinians in a clampdown on a protest in West Bank's Nablus city. While in Jerusalem city, the regime forces arrested 3 Palestinians.
Russia says NATO is purposely destabilizing the Black Sea with its Sea Breeze 21 joint military exercises. A foreign ministry spokesperson said the drills are politically driven. In a briefing, Maria Zakharova said the US and allies are turning the area to a conflict zone. She said the drills are an attempt to make another region unstable under Washington's guidance. The spokesperson termed the multinational level exercise openly anti-Russian and provocative. Led by Ukraine, the yearly exercises are being held in the Black Sea, which include the US, NATO, among 30 other states. The Arab coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed an explosive-laden drone launched by the Houthi rebels towards southern Saudi Arabia.
In a statement, a coalition spokesperson said Yemeni rebels attempted to target Khamis Mushat city. The U.S. State Department says Washington is beyond fed up and horrified by the repeated Houthi attacks inside Yemen. In a press briefing, the department spokesperson Ned Price said the assaults are exacerbating Yemen's humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, the Yemeni government and the UAE Southern Transitional Council have agreed to stop all forms of escalation against each other. Saudi state media said both sides held a meeting in the Saudi capital to discuss the implementation of the Riyadh initiative.
Moving on to Iraq, where hundreds of people took to the streets in capital Baghdad over worsening power and water cuts amid a searing heat wave. The demonstrators slammed the government for not providing its citizens with enough electricity. Residents said power went out completely across most of the country's provinces before dawn. Power from the main grid suffers year-round, but the shortages worsen during the hot summer months. This comes only days after Iraq's electricity minister resigned over the power crisis. In Niger, the military says Boko Haram fighters have killed 4 civilians and injured another 2 in an attack in the southeast. Niger's mixed multinational force said the militants intercepted a passenger bus between Difa and Mainsaroa. In a statement, it said the militants later ambushed the soldiers. It said the military killed 13 fighters in ensuing clashes, while 6 soldiers were injured. The force said it seized 1 vehicle, several weapons, and large quantities of munition. The mixed multinational force is made up of troops from Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. India's death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 400,000 after the country logged 853 daily deaths. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 182 million people so far.
Amid the spread of Delta variant, the emergence of new COVID-induced diseases and vaccine controversies are threatening gains made in the fight against the pandemic. Scientists are warning that after black fungus in India, more dangerous and even deadly fungal infections have spawned in critically ill coronavirus patients globally. In Bangladesh, the streets of the capital Dhaka are eerily empty, except for soldiers implementing a national lockdown. The Delta variant is also said to badly impact summer tourism, which is vital to southern Europe's economies. Meanwhile, a nighttime curfew is imposed in several Portuguese municipalities as authorities scramble to contain a surge.
The government decided that in municipalities with high or very high risk, with an incidence rate of 120 or 240, there will be a restriction of circulation on public roads from 11 p.m. We are not in a position to consider the pandemic under control, and I urge everyone to continue to comply with the rules and to avoid risky behavior.
Thailand has reported record deaths for the 3rd day in a row. Indonesia is tripling its oxygen supplies to hospitals as the Delta variant worsens the outbreak. The variant has also driven South Korea's daily count of cases to the highest level in nearly 6 months. Meanwhile, Australia has announced to halve the number of international arrivals as Canberra battles to contain outbreaks of the Delta variant.
To temporarily reduce commercial inbound passenger arrivals to all major ports by 50% from current caps to reduce the pressure on quarantine facilities due to the increased risks of the Delta strain of the virus.
The White House has sent out special teams to hotspots across the country to combat the Indian strain. Over on the south, sanctions hit Venezuela has begun administering Cuba's Abdala vaccine in the country. Meanwhile, the African Union has slammed the EU for hoarding vaccine supplies, saying not a single jab was sent to Africa.
Pakistan has received 2.5 million doses of Moderna COVID-19 vaccines donated by the United States under the COVAX facility. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the delivery highlights Washington-Islamabad friendship and cooperation on COVID-19. The country has reported 24 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the toll has risen to 22,345. It says nearly 1,300 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry adds that out of over 959,000 cases, more than 905,000 people have recovered. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says his country values its relations with Azerbaijan and wants to strengthen cooperation. He said this at a meeting with outgoing Ambassador of Azerbaijan, Ali Alizada, in Islamabad. The Prime Minister appreciated the envoy's contributions to the deepening of bilateral relations. Alizada hailed Pakistan's support on the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the disagreement with the EU over the Northern Irish Brexit protocol can be sorted out with goodwill and patience. In a joint press briefing with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, he said the current arrangements need to be fixed first. Responding, Merkel said things should be taken step by step. She added that immediate priority is to find a durable solution to the row over the status of Northern Ireland. Merkel said the 3-month extension for shipments of food products from the UK to Northern Ireland will give enough time for a durable solution. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law that will require businesses to report their greenhouse gas emissions. The move has been described as Russia's first step towards carbon regulation to combat climate change. Russia has been accused of setting an unambitious emissions target, but Putin says it is a myth that Moscow is not taking climate change seriously. Russia joined the Paris Climate Agreement in 2019. It aims to cut its emissions to 70% by 2030. Protesters have pulled down statues of British royals in the Canadian city of Winnipeg. The country's treatment of Indigenous children and the discovery of unmarked graves has sparked public anger. A large statue of Queen Victoria was defaced with red spray paint, while its base was covered in red handprints. A smaller statue of Queen Elizabeth was also toppled, as both royals are seen as representatives of the country's colonial history. Meanwhile, a cancelled Canada Day march in the capital, Ottawa, turned into a sea of orange. Thousands rallied wearing orange shirts to honor the victims and the survivors of the Canada's residential school system. Vigils and rallies were also held across other parts of the country. In Canada, a wildfire that began after record-breaking temperatures has destroyed most of Litton town in British Columbia. Parliamentarian Brad Weiss said the town has sustained structural damage and 90% of the village was reduced to ashes. He added the fire also caused extensive damage to hydro stations and highways, limiting access to Litton by road. The government officials have given out fresh evacuation orders as more wildfires tear through the province. Earlier, British Columbia Premier John Horgan said more than 1,000 people in Litton were evacuated. Nearly 500 people have died due to record-breaking heat over the last 5 days in British Columbia. Meanwhile, in India, 27 python hatchlings have been released into the wild in eastern Orissa state's Khorda district. Authorities said the hatchlings were released after the eggs were successfully incubated artificially. They said 30 eggs were collected in May by the villagers in the Chandaka forest. The non-venomous Indian python, found widely in the region, is not considered dangerous to humans. In the Philippines, authorities are evacuating thousands of families living close to an island volcano in Batangas province. The alert for the Taal volcano south of Manila has been moved to level 3 after it spewed a high plume of gas and steam.
A presidential spokesperson said the government has deployed military to help move the residents away from the danger zone. In a statement, he asked the residents to remain vigilant and cooperate with authorities should the need for evacuation arise. The seismology agency said that the towns of Onglo, Silo, and Laurel are in danger from the eruption and volcanic tsunami. The agency said it has recorded 29 volcanic earthquakes in the past 24 hours. Taal spewed clouds of ash in January last year, prompting the evacuation of more than 100,000 people.
An 82-year-old woman will be flying into space along with the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos later this month.
Wally Funk will be the oldest person ever to travel into space on the first crewed flight from rocket company Blue Origin. Funk was the youngest of 13 women who passed NASA's astronaut training program in the 1960s. But they were denied the chance to become astronauts because of their gender. Funk was the first woman flight instructor at a U.S. military base. She was also the first woman to become an air safety investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board. She is due to join Bezos' brother, Mark, aboard the New Shepard rocket, as it ascends more than 62 miles above Earth to suborbital space. The passengers will experience a few minutes of weightlessness and marvel at the planet's curvature through viewing windows.
It's the time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In northern Italy, extraordinary measures are undertaken every year to save the Presena glacier from melting. More about this unique method in this report.
Experts say approximately 70% of the snow can be safe from melting over the summer season with the protective covering. A protective covering has been placed over an area of some 120,000 square meters on the Presena Glacier in an operation that took nearly a month. A glaciologist from the Trento Science Museum, Christian Casarotto, said that the covering basically works the same way as a reflective window guard.
Sono delle strisce larghe 5 metri.
They are 5 meter wide and 70 meter long strips that are laid across the glacier at the end of the winter season. This slows down the melting of the snow on the surface. Imagine that silver cloth that we put on the dashboard of our car in the summer. Without the sheet, our black dashboard gets hotter, unlike with the sheet on top, and it warms up less.
Experts follow what is called mass balance to study the effects of climate change. Casarotto explained it has experienced a downward trend in the last 15 or 20 years, leading to the reduction in mass of glaciers.
Quindi ci si porta sugli...
The difference between the winter snow accumulation and the summer snow melt gives us the net balance. That is how much the glacier has gained if the snow accumulations have been higher, or how much the glacier has lost if the losses have been higher. That's what we've been experiencing now for the last 15 to 20 years, a continuous downward trend and therefore a reduction in mass of our glaciers.
Casarotto explained how studying glaciers can teach us about the direction we are headed towards. According to him, the study arms us with the knowledge we need to correct our course and make sustainable policies for the betterment of future generations.
Lows and the highs of the business world now. The U.S. economy has added 850,000 jobs in June as employers continue to boost wages to entice the unemployed back to work. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said the unemployment rate was little changed at 5.9%. After disappointing jobs growth in April and May, hiring is now picking up steam as COVID-19 restrictions keep rolling back. President Joe Biden said the economy has added 3 million jobs since he took office in January. The U.S. stocks have climbed up after the June jobs report showed an accelerating recovery for the U.S. labor market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose more than 0.1% higher at open. The S&P 500 also landed in the positive category, opening over 0.25% higher. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite also rose more than 0.25% higher at open. Meanwhile, oil prices dropped after OPEC Plus ministers delayed their output policy meeting. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.